I was bullied.
Now I was a bully. Bryan's stutter was one of the many things that I bullied him over.
I always believed that I didn't have anyone to talk to or share what I was going through.
It's amazing how a sincere, simple apology can change everything.
Happy New Year, everybody. Happy 2025. Happy quarter of a century into this century.
Happy New Year, everyone.
You sound happy. You sound very happy to be in the new year.
Thrilled.
Was it a dull Christmas? Clearly it was. Yes, and that's me bullying Clinton. So I think it's safe to say that one of the biggest hits of the year at the end of last year in cinemas was of course Wicked, and so many people have a connection to its story, whether it's its connection to the Wizard of Oz and the culture and the childhood memories of that movie, or the multiple generations of people who have found a fondness for Wicked the musical, which has been running on Broadway for the last 20 years, or even those who may have read the books of Gregory Maguire. And you may be wondering, why are we talking about Wicked? Well, the themes that are in the movie, which are inherent in the book, more so in the movie than in the musical, because you have a lot more space to expand. But the themes of bullying in all its forms are very, very present and in the forefront and the undercurrents of Wicked.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, there's one other connection one may have to Wicked, which in my case is that it was produced by my former boss, Mark Platt. So that for me was actually probably the biggest connection, because I didn't really know the musical before you took me to see the premiere.
Right.
And I didn't really, I knew the story of the Wizard of Oz. I didn't know the story of Wicked at all. But there were so many things that you could look at from a bullying framework that were some which were completely blatant and obvious, and then some that were much more subtle.
Sure.
But I think the biggest of it for me was the extent to which it forces you to rethink who heroes are and who monsters are.
Right.
And
who is the perpetrator and who is the victim, and how we perceive things and how we associate things. I mean, let's just take a look at how the definition of the word wicked in the dictionary, what it means and how it's evolved within culture and zeitgeist. So the word wicked means evil and nefarious and loathsome, and it's got all these negative connotations. And the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz is evil, and she's a perpetrator, and she frightens, and she scares, and she imprisons Dorothy and her friends. There's the famous cackle of hers, and she writes across the sky, "Surrender, Dorothy." So there's all of those connotations that wicked is somebody who's bad and somebody who does the perpetrating. However,
Well, yeah, that's probably a generational thing. But I remember as early as like 2004, 2008, I remember meeting some artists in London, and everything was wicked. And what they meant by wicked was like amazing, cool,
yes,
awesome. Like that was a wicked movie. Meant like that was a great movie.
yeah,
So, obviously this was designed to have the original connotations of the Wicked Witch from the Oz movie for using that definition of wicked. But I think that you can't ignore how
Correct.
it's interpreted by a younger audience.
because of that, yes,
Yeah. And I think, and then also from that perspective, just also how we were talking about heroes and monsters, in this having to reconsider who villains are and who heroes are,
right,
how in this case you end up having sometimes misdirected empathy because there's this assumption that this good person is deserving of empathy and the bad person isn't.
It's interesting you frame it as the term of misdirected empathy, because one might think, and certainly our viewers might question our whole approach of directing empathy at people who people who bully, as a misdirected empathy, because, and we will unpack this in loads of detail in other episodes, but
Sorry, no, go ahead. I was going to say the other thing in terms of villains and monsters,
yeah,
or heroes and villains, monsters and heroes,
yes,
is the whole dichotomy of black and white, right? Evil versus good.
right,
In this case, black and white was replaced with pink and green, right? Pink representing good, the same way as white supposedly represents good,
right,
and green representing evil or bad, the same way as black represents bad in a context of black and white.
right,
Okay? And then little experiment I did
yes,
is that if you mix green and pink, you end up with grey. The same way as you do black and white.
black and white is grey.
Yeah. And there's so many grey areas in the movie.
Before you went on to that point, I wanted to finish and say that we will explore a point that we know is controversial, that we are conditioned to not direct empathy at the perpetrator because they have been bad and they've done wrong. But we want to change that whole thinking and go, there's always a context. And even in the case of Wicked, there is a context.
Right.
When one, and you have basically, in your journey through life, you have basically traveled Galinda's journey, because she was the bully in the story. She was the one who had her posse of of enablers and bystanders who conjure up the whole idea of embarrassing Elphaba with the hat at the party. But we know that by the end, in The Wizard of Oz, she uses her powers for good and for redemption, and she casts good spells. I mean, imagine a world where all we needed to do was wear red slippers and to click our heels 3 times. That's all we can do is imagine.
I don't know if I absolutely love the idea of me being Glinda. Not because of
Of the pink.
Not because of pink.
No, but I mean the journey of once having bullied somebody and found a redemption. That's the parallel I'm
But you see, I'm not convinced, at least not for part 1, and I don't know what happens in part 2. But I'm not convinced she's been redeemed. That's the thing. Like, I don't think she's.
We know she's redeemed because of where she is in The Wizard of Oz.
Okay, but has, I mean, okay. So I have to just guess that something happened that redeemed her. I haven't seen what that thing is.
No, but because Wicked is a backstory, we know how it ends.
So she's become a good person in the end.
Yes.
But as of now, at least having seen this part 1, I have no idea what it is that she does to redeem herself. But based on her current behavior, even though it's transformed somewhat since the beginning, you know, where she's become a little bit maybe more empathetic towards Elphaba in some way, she's still, you know, and her first thing was, I'll turn you white, or I'll turn you not green anymore.
Yes.
I'm still not convinced that she's done anything. I think, and in fact, I think that's part of the what I mean by misdirected empathy, is that we assume that she's the good witch, and so we're going to immediately empathize with her and like side with her because she's good, supposedly.
I don't know. I don't agree. I think we see her the way both the story, the movie, and the musical start. We see her at the end, and then it goes back in time. So we know how she finishes up. But I think, for me certainly, the empathy goes immediately to Elphaba, because she is so obviously the outcast and so blatantly different to everyone else. And the cliche is that the person who is different is always bullied.
Sure. But if you look at even what are supposed to be like maybe the little moral arcs towards Glinda becoming more good, okay? Yes. So she teaches Elphaba how to dance, or whatever it was that she was doing, kind, you know, a couple of kind gestures. All of those were motivated by self-interest.
Sure.
The one was to get in the good graces of
Madame Marable.
Yeah. The other one was to impress the prince, whatever that guy was. Was he a prince?
Yes. Yeah.
To impress him to some degree. That she was being like, you know, decent. But for me or for Glinda, being good is about optics, not about empathy or kindness. It's all about optics for her.
For her, yes.
Yeah. And so, again, I'm hoping that there's a genuine redemption point where she does something that warrants being deemed good as a good witch. But to date, everything I've seen has been not really about benevolence.
There are 2 other things that I want to raise just as you think about them. And the first one is, we often talk about where bullying starts, and we have said it is our belief and there's research that says it doesn't start at school, it doesn't start on social media, it starts in the home, and it starts with conditioning by the people with whom you as a child have your first interaction, and that's your parents. In the beginning of the movie, the question is asked, are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? And that question is about nature and nurture. Is bullying behavior taught? Is it innate, or is it thrust upon you? So it poses that question for me. It's like, what instincts is one born with? I am a firm believer, and I talk about this in our keynote, that, when you see a newborn child, whoever the child is, wherever the child comes from, whether it's black, Asian, Latino, white, European, whatever, when you look at a child's eyes when they're born, there's no bias, there's no judgment, there's no prejudice, there's no opinion, there's no differential between what we know as black or white, or gay or straight, or Jew and Muslim, or whatever the opposites are you want to use. All that is thrust upon them, and they're taught that the people who are different must be feared. And right here, in the case of Elphaba at the school, she's different. And so there's this whole thing of, she's scary and must be feared, but actually she is the most vulnerable.
But I mean, in terms of what you're raising, in terms of is it born or thrust,
Yeah.
you see the evidence in the movie. You see her father, from Elphaba's perspective, you see her father bullying her,
Yes.
excluding her, dissing her, disowning her, literally,
Correct.
wanting nothing to do with her. So she's obviously going to build walls to defend from that. That's you literally see that happening.
Yeah.
In the case of Glinda, she's very entitled and spoiled. You see by her room, she's got a private room where everyone else doesn't, and it's pink, and it's all the entitlement is so hard to miss. And so, of course, someone who's that entitled, who is going to get everything she wants, who can do no wrong, and she even says, "It's going to miss you," or "You're going to miss me," to her parents. She says, "You're going to miss me," not the other way around.
And it's the classic metaphor of the mean girl.
Yeah. But I mean, you see that in both their cases, that their upbringing and their nurture has everything to do with who they are.
Right. And the other point I wanted to raise, before I forget, I said point one was about, are you born wicked, or is it thrust upon you? We see how Elphaba, even though she's victimized, and she's ostracized, and she's made fun of, she has a soft spot for Galinda, and it's not an atypical thing for somebody who is victimized to not initially, while they're being victimized, to find empathy for their perpetrator, but they want to. It's like I remember as a kid, this is a strange memory that's just kind of come to me. Even though I was being bullied by certain people, I don't actually recall if this included you. I don't think it did. But I do favors for them. I'd do things for them. I would, just like random things and let them in the line at lunch, or I would give them something that I knew that they wanted, just to try and befriend them rather than constantly have them as an enemy. So, like when Elphaba's invited by the wizard to go to Oz, there is something in her heart that is so empathetic and soft and gentle, saying to Galinda, who's been mean to her and given her that much room in her room and all of that, she's saying, "Come with me."
I mean, I'll beg to differ, I suppose, about the notion of the invite really being an invite.
Sure.
Because the wizard wanted to use her labor and her skills to do his bidding. So he needed her. He wasn't like inviting her to bestow, you know what I mean? It wasn't like an act of kindness and generosity on his behalf.
No,
Invite her.
right, okay, but I'm talking about
She didn't know that.
Alphabet, but didn't know that. I'm talking about the
No, I get it. No, I get what you said.
two different points. Alphabet still invited Galinda, and when she arrived at Oz, that they all go, "Who's this?" She wasn't on the list, as one would say.
I mean, yeah. And so, I mean, I do think that there is that undertone, because there's some of the things that bugged me about the movie. Let's just go there a little bit in terms of, like, even from the bullying context. Because I think in many ways, for me, the things I liked most was just the subtext of the movie. Some of the more blatant things, like, because it was Mean Girls. It was whatever happened to little baby Jane. It's you're seeing these, it's like it was Legally Blonde.
Also, her whole notion of how to be popular.
Yeah.
This is how you get popular.
Yeah, makeover.
And you'll be popular, but not ever as popular as me.
Yeah.
Which is so.
And again, it's the makeover, which is just like that. To me, that was a bit tired. That whole thing about it.
You found it interesting that the casting of Elphaba in the movie is black.
Yeah. Well, to be specific, I think that
what that means.
That the subtext of being green, being an allegory for being black, was amplified by the actress being black. I didn't see the musical with Idina Menzel, but I would imagine that the racial allegory is not as amplified or as pronounced.
Although, interestingly enough, the first time I saw Wicked was only 5 years after it opened, and the first Elphaba that I ever saw was actually black, and it wouldn't have mattered because of her being green. But I think we are living in a time where there's a whole rankle and a rot going on over wokeism versus anti-wokeism. Which one has gone too far? Have either one gone too far? And there's a bullying mentality on both sides. I think years ago, we would have seen an all-white cast. We're living in a time where all the characters in the movie and the casting are black, are Asian, are gay, are all shapes and sizes, are large, are small. There's no single archetype. And I think that there was a time in which you wouldn't have seen that.
Although I've seen some criticisms that despite Peter Dinklage being the goat, literally
I haven't seen this, yes.
the is it Munchkins that live in the land of Oz?
Yes.
The Munchkins weren't represented by actual little people. I mean, that's what they actually are. And so, well, I mean, that's the.
No, I know, but I mean,
but there's a school of thought. I mean, I don't subscribe to this, by the way. Well, it's not a matter of whether or not I subscribe to it. There's, who acting is acting, right? So you're taking on, so the notion that only a straight person can play a straight person or only a gay person can play a gay person is ridiculous to me. Even in the trans thing is ridiculous to me. That a straight person should, of course, be able to play a trans person. But there's a discussion around, well, why don't you hire a trans person to play a trans person who has a lived experience that they can bring to the role?
What is interesting, though, in terms of what you're just saying, is the actress who's playing Nessa Rose in real life is in a wheelchair.
Right. So you see, so you get all these.
So,
and is it a question of woke, or is it a question of representation? Everything's woke at the moment. Like it's become a catch-all for anything you don't really like.
Right. And it's like, I remember not long ago, Tom Hanks saying that he regretted, even though he got an Oscar nomination, I think he even won the Oscar. Yeah, he did win the Oscar.
Philadelphia.
Yes. He regretted playing a gay man with AIDS in the 80s. What the fuck for?
Now that's stupid.
I mean, why? Why would you regret that? Because by actually going back and saying you regret that, you are denying your own capability as an actor and going, it doesn't matter. What you're doing is feeding into the stereotype that if you are straight, you can't play a gay man and a gay man who has AIDS.
I mean, that becomes
so then
stupid because
then is he saying that in playing Forrest Gump, he also regrets that because he's not dumb?
Yeah, I mean, and what can only someone with cancer play a cancer patient?
Correct. And
I mean, it becomes so stupid. Yeah, I mean, so what? Should he have had a lobotomy to play the role?
Exactly.
I mean, it's just that's stupid. That really is stupid.
But that's unfortunately where the wokeism has gotten to. I think because
You see,
the world of Wicked is fantasy. Having the various representations, for want of a word, doesn't bother me at all. And you've just said it. I mean, acting is acting. 6-time Tony Award winner Audra McDonald is just now on Broadway playing the most iconic role of a female in the Broadway canon, and that's Mama Rose in Gypsy. And she's the first black person to play what has been a quintessentially white role. It was written as that, and she's bringing a whole different set of stuff to it. And is it because is she bringing it because she's black, or is she bringing it because she's just a damn good actress? And I've seen the commentary on comparisons of various Mama Roses over the years, who have all looked different, sounded different, but suddenly you have a Mama Rose who's got a different skin color. Why are people so freaked out by this?
Well, I mean, you see, the thing is that's why I have a problem with woke, because but I have a problem with the way it's become defined.
Yes.
Because originally, all it meant was having an awareness of racial disparities. That's and
being able
And cultural disparities and capabilities and
no, it was narrowly defined.
okay.
It was literally recognizing that that you were aware that as a white person you had inherent advantages. It wasn't to say reparations and going down the whole rabbit hole with it.
Right.
It was just an awareness of where that came from and to factor that into your thinking. That's what all it was meant to originally mean.
Sure.
And then it became accepting pronouns no matter what, and it went the whole gamut.
Went too far.
And so now like you have people running in a campaign, political campaign, on being anti-woke, but anti-woke has come to mean something very different. Now whatever you don't like, or whatever, now, so they see diversity, inclusion, and what's DEI? Diversity,
Diversity, inclusion, and
I forget what the E is for.
DEI, diversity.
Shit.
It'll come to me.
But regardless, let's just even say the E is for empathy, okay?
Right.
I mean, it's not, but diversity, inclusion, and empathy. Let's just say those are the three things.
Right.
Why are those bad things? Now, people say, well, we don't want the government mandating who we hire and things like that. And there's an argument to be made. It shouldn't be mandated. It should just be business sense if you want to have a multicultural understanding of the market that you're serving.
Right.
It should just make business sense. You shouldn't have to be compelled. But that's where it's got, where the word diversity has a negative connotation.
Has become a four-letter word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which to me is just absolutely...
And woke is actually a four-letter word. But that's not what I was fucking referring to.
I mean, and this goes to bullying as well, because now being kind and empathetic to someone, I mean, we're going to confront this now, where being kind and empathetic is being considered woke.
No.
That's how it's going to be framed.
Let's just to also not to change the subject, but to stay within the world of the world, in the world of the world and wicked. Let's have a look at what is being represented as a metaphor by the animals not being allowed to teach and being gagged and being caged.
And not only that, the sin for which Elphaba has to escape from is using her power to help those animals.
Yep.
Wanting to defend and protect the underdog rather than, use them for powers of surveillance, which is what Oz wanted her to use it for, to surveil and to have these fascist overtones to the people living there. Yeah.
And it's a lovely moment in the movie and the book when the wizard and Morrible realize that they can't control her because she has powers that they thought she had, but actually she has far more power. She's the first one who in however long who's been able to interpret and knows the language of the Grimmery.
Yeah.
And so it's a case of trying to control somebody who actually has more power in them than you think they have.
Which could be argued, Oz, the wizard, is trying to control her like she's an abortion doctor at an Alabama clinic,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone else in Oz. And I think then also metaphorical in that regard is the fact that she has this uncontrollable rage, which is also very understandable because a lot of women at the moment, understandably, have a lot of rage,
Mm-hmm.
justifiable rage.
Justifiable rage.
And so I think that there's something very relatable there going on as well. And then to flip the switch a little bit, because I've also seen criticism of, and you could argue it's just Ariana Grande's body type, but this little wafy, skimpy, blonde white girl also is a metaphor for many people of like, is this what the ideal of beauty and good looks like?
Yes, and we know because there's been so much criticism and writing on it, how teenagers have been driven to suicide and into states of mental ill health because of the stereotype of what beauty looks like that is pushed to them on social media, on Instagram.
And so this is a mega scale version of that, because look at what she looks like. And that's the good witch. She's perfect, literally pitch perfect. Probably better than most. But she is, but she is away from, I mean, I don't know that she has an eating disorder. She didn't look weak to me.
No.
But again, is that the ideal that's being perpetuated in terms of what a beauty standard is?
And it's strangely enough, I've just thought about this now. It's the perpetuation of the classic Barbie doll.
Yeah.
Who's pink. Okay, and what would happen, Mattel, if you released dolls that were not that particular stereotype? I know that there are now different color dolls. It's like, while we're on the subject, I think that social media and WhatsApp and Facebook and all the communication apps perpetuate racial stereotypes because of the color of emojis. I mean, I refuse to use an all-white emoji, a white skin emoji. I use the standard gold.
Yellow, gold.
Gold, yellow.
Yeah.
And I actually I have to say this, and I'm going to get feedback on this and flack on this, and bring it, people, bring it, because that's what this podcast is about, engagement.
Yeah.
They are perpetuating a stereotype, not an identity, a stereotype, by giving people an option to have a thumbs up in the color of their skin. So, in other words, even if I don't know you, if I haven't met you, but I'm talking to you, they're placing race as something as something essential, or they're placing it as an option to use in your communication. And I refuse, because I don't care when I communicate with somebody. I don't care that they know I'm white. I could be green. So in the same way, why are they not giving you emojis that are a cross or a Star of David or
I think they are.
yeah, but I mean, come on, people.
I mean, yeah, listen, I think it probably started off where it was just like a tan, whitish emoji to begin with. But I think by and large, emojis based on melanin is a stupid way to go. I understand where it came from.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. Listen, we've got a lot of other crosses to carry. I don't think that's one we should take on right now.
No, but the thing about podcasting, as we all know, is that it's a conversation, and stuff comes up in the moment, and we would absolutely rather have something that feels like it's in the moment and is spontaneous than something that is, okay, we've got a script now, so we've checked this point, we've checked this point. And I think it's more, yeah, I mean, I prefer those kinds of podcasts.
At which point, it's probably a good time to say goodbye. Thank you. It's been a long one, I think.
It's been wicked.
It's been wicked being here with you. And until next time.
Bye.